This is a continuation from the August 7th meeting that was recessed. The next item, old business, Walpurdy has relayed that they are stuck in traffic and asked that we move that until they get here. Move it.
I think that we can move it until we move on to the work session agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So.
Excuse me, Mayor, it was part of a recess meeting, and it needs to stay as part of this meeting. So you can talk about the other topics first, but the Walpurdy has to be a part of this meeting.
Correct.
Yes. Thank you. So, new business, the discussions that were pulled from the consent, monthly financial report. Commissioner Baxter.
So we have a list of expenditures of approximately 69% of the general fund budget. I need to have an understanding of the list of those expenditures. I was looking through the rest of the documentation, and I didn't see it pulled out. Can you tell me where that's at?
You mean the summary kind of expenditure? Mm-hmm. Is that what you mean?
Mm-hmm. Is that someplace else within these documents that we have here?
It's right behind the staff report.
At the very end?
Directly behind the financial statement update staff report, there's a revenue summary with a pie chart, and then the next page is the expenditure summary page.
I'd like to make a statement again. We've made this statement several times. It would be very useful to have all of these pages numbered so that we could easily reference them. If we could try to make that happen, that would be wonderful. So there's a pie chart in this first financial statement update. There's a pie chart.
Behind...
It's this one right here?
And then the page behind that is the expenditure summary.
And so if I'm reading this correctly, and help me understand if I'm not, we have our total expenditures for FY23 are come in at about 70% of what we had budgeted.
Correct.
And the rest of that is going to go back into the general fund, except for those that are already dedicated.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that are in the rollover budget amendments that are later on in the agenda. A lot of those, I think it was like $4 million worth of rollovers.
Okay. Of those $4 million, then what does that bring us up to for our total FY23 expenditures, percentage-wise?
If we were to include those, probably more like 85 to 90, probably.
So between 85 and 90% of our FY23 budget has been spent or is going to be spent because it's been rolled over.
You could say that.
But
even
could you say that? Are you saying that?
I'm saying, well, if you look at it just FY23, no. But if you kind of project it out into 24, then you could say that. But it won't be spent in 23. So these aren't final yet, but when you see the final numbers, it'll be more like 16.3 million. It won't be 20 or 21. But
Of the 23,675,000, and so then the rest of that is going back into general fund.
as of June 30th, yes, it will go back in. But then
June 30th.
Yeah, but on these ordinances that'll come up later with the rollovers, they will kind of be pulled out of fund balance to be appropriated again in FY24.
The $4 million that came off, that were already dedicated, got put back into the general fund, and that's what the later budget adjustments are. And so then there's there's still about $2 million that went back into the general fund as unspent?
Right.
Okay. Thank you. No more questions.
It's from the board concerning the monthly finance report. Is there a motion to approve the monthly financial?
I make a motion we approve the monthly financial.
Moved and second. Discussion. Commissioner Laus?
In favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor?
Clark?
Favor?
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Baxter?
Favor.
Motion passes. Next, pull from consent the donation and grant rollovers. Ordinance 2024-01. Commissioner Baxter?
So we have $40,000 that was reappropriated from the Blue Cross Blue Shield Wellness Grant. Is that what I'm reading, even though it says Administration IT?
Correct, yeah. The wellness budget is in the administration department. Well, the wellness line item is in the administration IT department.
So it just wasn't hitting the correct line item before? Is this a line item thing,
No,
or is
no,
this?
these are kind of separated by department. Wellness being in administration IT and the shop with a cop being in police. Those are just kind of like separated by department. So that's why it's under administration IT.
So this is just recognizing that they exist, and then they're gonna go back towards those programs, like the Shop with the Cop, the $16,000 is going back to the Shop with the Cop program?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you. No other questions?
Any other questions from the board? Motion to approve ordinance 2024-01.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioner Clark. Discussion? Mr. Baxter?
In favor?
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor?
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Laux?
In favor.
Motion passes. Next item, pull from consent. Ordinance 2024-02, project and program rollovers. Commissioner Baxter?
All right, so on the back of this page, there is a area entitled Public Works Operation Division, and I need to have a little bit more of an understanding of it says West Sycamore and West Gannon sidewalks. Those are done though now. And so is this something additional, or has this happened since
I
this
believe,
is accounting for it after it was done?
when did it finish, Chris? It was probably,
Yeah. We're under contract still with that. That project is not complete and has not been closed out from an accounting preference standpoint. So we're looking at technically, I believe, let's see here, this project was started on notice to proceed was on June 21st. We are substantially complete. Well, for the most part, what you see out there is a lot of punch list items and a few things done. From a contractual standpoint, they're supposed to be done by mid-September. And so basically they actually have not even billed us for anything yet. So basically, we're rolling over the funds to pay the completion of that project and close it out.
Okay.
So it's not a new project. It's just basically, we didn't finish it by June 30th, so we need to roll the funds over to pay it in this current fiscal year.
And none of the funds have been dispersed so far?
We have dispersed funds for the engineer. We have not dispersed funds for payment to the contractor.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so then we have, Chris, I'm sorry.
No problem.
I mean, this might be your question and it might not.
Okay.
It says back ordered office furniture. Is that Is that the new furniture?
Yes, ma'am. We purchased a new office furniture for our administrative assistant, Ms. Janine, and due to back orders that it hadn't come in at the end of the fiscal year. It was recently installed and within the last week, 10 days, and so we're rolling those funds over, so when the bill comes in, we're able to pay it.
Okay, cool, thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
No further questions, I move to approve,
Questions, comments from the board?
I move to approve.
Is there a motion to approve ordinance 2024-02?
So
Yep.
move.
We have a motion. We need a
Second.
second. Mr. Baxter? Any questions? Commissioner Laux?
In favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor.
Favor. Commissioner Baxter? Motion passes. Next item that was removed from consent, budget adjustments, capital reserve, ordinance 2024-03. Commissioner Baxter?
All right, so if you look on the second page of this document, we have down towards the bottom, the second from the bottom, we have wayfinding. At the very bottom, we have branding, but I don't have any understanding of where we are with that and how we're moving forward with that since the branding seems to have stalled. So can I have a little bit of an explanation for those funds? Is this new wayfinding that's going to be moving forward even though we haven't approved a new branding strategy?
Let me make sure that I'm following it. I'm not seeing the wayfinding on you're talking about the reimbursement resolution right now?
Not the reserve? That's also the one that was just approved.
Yeah, okay, so.
No, I'm sorry.
yeah,
Could you
that's
answer
all right.
that question
I
anyway
will,
for
I
me?
will. These are unspent funds for both the branding and the wayfinding. So you have unspent funds, those are rolling over to this, the fiscal year that we're in right now.
So are they still rolled over underneath those specific categories? Or
Yes.
they did, okay, so they didn't go back into the general fund?
They did not.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, I thought that was 2024-02 still, so I do not need to discuss 2024-03, so unless anyone else does, I will move to approve it. Second.
We have a motion to approve ordinance 2024-23 and second by Commissioner Harrison. Discussion? Baxter?
In favor.
Commissioner Harris? Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Laux?
In favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor.
Motion passes. Next was fire contract renewal with Johnston County. Commissioner Baxter?
So we often talk about how we have a fire contract for the county service area in Wake County, but we don't often talk about the Johnston County Fire District. And so I had asked Chief Perry just to explain a little bit about how those numbers and totals were determined, and does the new contract base compensation from Johnston County on the 2023 number of calls, or if there was a projected increase due to the increased number of homes being built in Johnston County. So I'll just let you go ahead and
Sure.
explain to everyone so they know.
We started this, the contract formally with Johnston County in 2014. We were providing services to some of those areas prior to that. but in 2014, we actually entered into a contract with Johnston County. The reason for the contract is primarily for one reason. There are a lot of peripheral reasons, very good peripheral reasons, but the primary reason Johnston County contracts with us is by us providing service to these areas, these people get insurance benefits that they would not get otherwise. There's not a Johnston County fire station close enough to these streets and these homes, so they're unable to get insurance savings, insurance benefits. By us contracting with them, our distance is much shorter. Therefore, these people do get some insurance savings. So that's the reason they contract with us. Some of the other peripheral reasons, just to give you a perspective, is we are able to provide a quicker response time. Distance, obviously, we can get there pretty quick. So that's, in my mind, a very good peripheral reason, but not necessarily why they contract with us, if that makes sense. So to address the funding just a little bit. So when we originally began to contract with Johnston County, we began to contract them for somewhere in the neighborhood of about $4,000 to serve these homes. They are, one is a long dirt road, one is a subdivision. Neither one are seeing a lot of growth. The subdivision, you actually have to come into that part of Johnston County from Wake County. So that makes a lot of sense for us to, Johnston County would actually have to come into Wake and then go back into their county, if that makes sense. But it's based on the property value and a formula that Johnston County calculated or devised back in 2014. So the growth within that area, not only the area that we serve, but the growth that they're seeing in the area figures into that formula. So over this almost 10-year period now, we've seen the revenue from covering this area go from about 4,000 to almost 16,000, probably with, I would say there may be one or two new homes, but other than that, it's the same area that we've covered. So you see the property value within that district and the formula that they use, we've seen quite a bit of increase over those. It's not a pay-per call at all. It's based strictly off property value and the formula that Johnston County established. We see the call numbers will flutter a little bit. Last year, they went up a little bit. Honestly, what typically drives that are residents with medical issues. So you get someone who lives in that area, they're dealing with some medical issues, they call for more calls, we see our call volume go up. That medical issue is either resolved or what have you, our call volume goes back down. And that's exactly what happened last year. We saw a slight increase with call volume. I will tell you to kind of wrap it up before I take any questions. This is something, the Corinth Holders community, and you'll find this of no surprise, is a very, very rapidly growing community. A lot of that is our growth, if you will, spilling over. If you want to live in the Zebulon community, but you don't necessarily want to live in Wake County, Corinth Holders can fit that bill very quickly. A couple of years ago, Corinth Holders was the fastest growing fire district in Johnston County, ahead of Cleveland, ahead of Clayton. That just gives you an idea of how fast Corinth Holders. So they've already got it in their roadmap long-term to look at building additional fire stations. So I think what we'll see eventually is our coverage of that area will begin to withdraw, and they won't need us to cover it as they build additional fire station facilities. But that kind of gives you where we came from, where we're at, and long-term where we're going to. I hope that maybe I answered most of your questions.
You did. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments from the board? Is there a motion to approve the fire contract renewal with Johnston County?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Harrison. Discussion? Commissioner Baxter?
In favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Favors.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor?
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Louds?
In favor.
Motion passes. I see that Wal Purdy is here, so we will go back to old business. and we'll pick up where we left off with Senior Planner Adam Culpepper.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump back real quick. All right, so gonna get back into this because we went through a lot at the last meeting. Wanted to walk through really quick, as we always do, looking at the standards that we have to follow for conditional rezonings. The first being that the proposed conditional rezoning advances the public health, safety, and welfare of the community. The second being that the proposed conditional rezoning is appropriate for its proposed location, is consistent with the proposed goals, objectives, and policies of the town's adopted policy guidance. Conditional rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest, and the concept plan associated with the conditional rezoning is consistent with the ordinance. And then lastly, any other relevant factors the board deems relevant. The applicant has revised a few of their conditions based on the last meeting. You'll see the highlighted area where they are looking at increasing the homes constructed. We'll have a minimum of 30% of them will have porches that wrap around, and the homes constructed with side-loaded garages and J driveways shall be allowed within the 5-foot setback. And that's to increase the number of homes that are going to be able to achieve J driveways. The porches, again, that's increasing the front porches to 30%. And then there are some inclusions of a few revised conditions. We kind of walk through these really quick. Homeowners Association will not allow any rental units. That's the key for number 19. Number 20, the Homeowners Association shall be operational prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. And then 21, the Homeowners Association shall appoint one resident to the advisory board at 25% resident occupied, and one resident at 50% occupied, and then an additional resident at 75% occupied. The applicant is here now. If you guys have any questions about any of these particular conditions or any other questions you have about the project, any questions for staff, I'd be happy to answer before we move on.
Questions from the board? Commissioner Miles?
On number 19, the homeowners association will not allow any rentals. How would that be enforced?
So it's a combination of things. If the HOA is the primary response for that, it'll be part of their HOA documentation that they'll be restricting rentals. The condition itself gets enforced by being a zoning, trying to think of the right terms. It is a zoning violation. Couldn't think of the word violation. So if it becomes aware to this town staff that there are rental units in the neighborhood, we would first contact the HOA to verify that they're keeping up with their requirements within the documents. If there is a rental unit, that would be a violation of these conditions if you guys approve it. And then we would run down the violation process with our code enforcement team. But that is a violation to the HOA, not the individual property owners. I do want to make that clear.
So what impact would the town have? We don't have the capabilities of making somebody move out of that house, correct? I mean,
No, we would, the specifics on how we would run about the violation and what kind of fees or anything like that may occur, I couldn't speak on. I'd have to do a little bit of digging, but we have established violation proceedings that we would run through, and any kind of fees would go to the HOA.
so we do have those on policy, though. We do have those fees.
Yeah. Yes.
Any other questions from the board? Commissioner Laux?
What type of a financial bite would this, if they had a rental unit in there, are we talking $100 or $5,000? How big of a bite would the town put on the HOA for not abiding by the rules?
Off the top of my head, I do not know. I'd have to do a little bit of double checking to see what the specifics of our ordinance. I don't directly deal with violations. Our code enforcement team does that. So unfortunately, I don't have that number in front of me, but I can look it up.
Commissioner Miles?
So basically, it's gonna depend on the citizens in there, kind of like basically coming to our code enforcement, just make sure you understand, telling us, hey, there's a renter next door. And then the code enforcement goes out and say, hey, are you a renter? How are we gonna prove that? I mean, I don't really quite
Well,
gather that.
we'd be reaching out first to the HOA
Okay.
to have them police their own HOA documents.
Okay.
They would tell us if they are renting. We would do some research that we can,
Okay.
because we can only do so much. We're basing it on a zoning violation that they have to upkeep. So it's
Okay,
working through the HOA for a lot of this, but
okay.
I'm going to quick step in to further expand upon Adam's comment. This is not atypical for larger developments. There are several other developments within Wake County that have similar regulations. The HOAs actually have different authorities than municipality when it comes to the regulation of their HOA documents, and they do have the authority to evict individuals from the dwelling units. There's processes and procedures that they would have to follow. But if somebody filed a complaint with the town, we would address it similar as if we had a tall grass and weeds or a broken fence or an inoperable vehicle. It falls into the code enforcement category. We start by contacting the HOA, then following up with a notice of violation. That creates a documentation trail, and we have to provide a reasonable time for the property to be brought into compliance. If it's not brought into compliance by that time, we send a second final zoning notice of violation. If it's not brought into compliance after that, we then proceed with fining the HOA. We do have the authority to fine for each day that the violation occurs. It would be upon the HOA to show that the violation has been corrected.
So it's almost like our code enforcement can now turn into eviction people. That's kind of.
No, the HOA turns into eviction people.
saying he's
The
gonna-
code enforcement just has code enforcement against the HOA.
Okay, thank you.
Laux?
Yeah, so this doesn't kind of drop off everyone's to-do list. What if we ask for some type of an annual certification from the HOA?
absolutely. You're more than welcome to suggest that condition. If the applicant agrees to it, it can be added, but any condition they have to agree to being added, yeah.
Would you feel about an annual certification?
There, did I miss that? 19, okay. HOL, yeah, annual report. Thank you. Yeah.
I still have
Baxter?
some trepidation surrounding the amount of time that it's going to take emergency vehicles to reach this development, because there's not going to be but the roads that we have already heard of. I know that the Chief Perry gave us a little bit of a broader understanding of what those times are going to look like when the fire station, the new fire station is built out. So I'm curious to know, like, what's going to be the lag time between, let's say, the development getting built out and then what our anticipated build out for the fire station is, or vice versa. Because I don't believe it's within the community's best interest to approve a development where there could be time where it takes 7 or 8 minutes for an emergency vehicle to reach one of the houses within the development. I'm really worried about that.
If I may as well.
Commissioner Miles?
If I may piggyback off that, I took it upon myself there again with the development to come from Pierce's Road to the entrance that they're trying to utilize coming off Sage Street. That's basically 1.5 miles. coming from 96 Highway to that entrance as well, basically is a mile and a half. Everything's about a mile and a half. So if you put 87 homes in there, that back person over there is gonna have an issue getting that time frame. I know even once we put the fire station here, it's still gonna be a ways back in there. So you're looking at potentially like 3 miles to get to that guy on the back. I personally don't believe that, I mean, the safety of that guy is more important than the guy at the front, at the back. And that, so from my concern, I think I spoke earlier with you guys as well. I sent images of there's currently a road there. I want to understand why they can't purchase that road there and kind of build upon that road that's already there. I did call the applicant earlier and spoke with briefly that they would know they'd be talking more about it, I guess, about that road that's currently there for us tonight as well. I think also you were going to pull up on Google Live. There's a road that runs literally from 96 Highway back to the entrance of the property that they're looking to purchase.
It's an ill-timed image.
Of course it does that.
No pressure, Adam.
But you sent those pictures to Mike.
I sent it to Mike.
So there's a possibility that if we can't find it, Mike, you could pull up your email and then just pull those images out
I
of
can't,
email?
without a flash drive, I can't transfer it from here to there.
So where are we looking specifically?
If you get on 96 Highway, there's an entrance, there's a road that's currently there.
Yeah, that particular entrance actually crosses multiple parcels, neither of which the applicant is in control of. I believe this is the road that you were, whoa, very sensitive. You were expressing.
There we go.
Yeah,
and
this actually crosses the Anderson property, and then goes into the separate remainder of the parcel that the developer is not in control of before it gets to the subject parcel in question.
So the current seller doesn't own that land?
Correct.
And here, Wake County IMAPS illustrates the property boundaries that it would have to cross. Yeah, you can see this is the location of that drive that crosses this parcel, this parcel. This is the property that's in question back here.
Go back to the entrance, right here, please.
I'm gonna go back to that one.
Can we show who owns that land ownership, the one going, I mean, the different parcels owners? Right there, who's that ownership?
It's one family.
That's part of the Anderson family that also owns the Zebulon Airport, as well as several large tracts in Wendell as well.
Gotcha. They own Eagle Rock, correct? They own it.
That's correct.
Track. Thank you.
I didn't know if
Yes,
there was
you
any.
wanna
So,
elaborate reason why we
as
didn't?
noted, the family that owns the property that my client is acquiring or is under contract to acquire doesn't own property that extends all the way out to Highway 96. The portion that is subject to this annexation and rezoning is the portion of the property that they own that is outside of the watershed. Everything else west of the property is watershed property. And that's significant because this is the only property that we would be able to annex and zone in the town of Zebulon. The rest of it, you couldn't extend utilities to, which is why that boundary exists the way that it does. In fact, during the zoning process, we had to revise the boundary of the site based upon updated watershed maps. And so there's a variety of reasons why providing access from this development out to 96 for the benefit of this development is not possible, at least at this time. One, property ownership; two, the fact that there's a watershed in the way. And the last thing I would mention is something my client noted. While the owners at some point want to sell it, that is the homestead in the middle of that property, the one that's being reserved, and they're not interested in selling it at this time. Eventually, they envision selling it, but at this time, they're not interested in selling that portion of the property. And in terms of response times, you know, I would venture to guess, and I can't speak for the fire department, obviously.
It's okay, don't speak for the fire department.
Okay, it just seems like Yulee Drive is not too far from the site that we're plugging into, and I'm not sure how response times would differ for our development versus homes that are already built in the community.
Any other questions? Commissioner Laux?
I had some concerns about fire protection too, but Chief Perry had told us previously that Hopkins could respond to this area very quickly. Plus two, our fire station is moving towards that direction from the downtown area at some point in time. And then I do think that land to the west and north will eventually be developed. Not as a huge subdivision, but, and when that happens, you're gonna have a access road over to Fowler, or to, is it Fowler? Not Fowler.
Farrell Meadows.
No, the next road. Farrell. It eventually will connect to Farrell Road. It's just a matter of time, which gives me some peace of mind.
So we've got stub streets on Lakewood, or Lacewing rather, and Yulee, and then it looks like there's a stub street to the south of the property as well, right?
Right, but Lacewing you'll never connect to, because what that is Dedham's land. That's Jim Dedham's land. I mean, the Dedham hardware land. His home sits right there where that stub is at. He's not gonna drive a road through his house. So that's out of the question. That looks good. Maybe as Larry just said, with time, anything's possible, but that's not gonna happen for a while. Yulee, like I said, that is the only entrance that you're running. You're coming up 6th Street, catching Yulee. And like I said, from 96 Highway, that's 1.5 miles. From Pierce's Road, it's 1.5 miles. Any way you come in there, the average is 1.5 miles just to get to that point where you see that stub is at. So now, like I said, anywhere you go in there, it's gonna add on time. I know we're banking on the fire department coming here behind and basing the future of our fire department. But there again, weigh the options.
If I may, Commissioner Baxter, just to kind of answer a question you had about the lead time, and I apologize, we're late. We got stuck in a tremendous amount of traffic on the way, and obviously missed the fire marshal's whole talk, but just so you know kind of the genesis of a project like this, if it is approved tonight, we still have to go through the whole design process. That can take upwards of a year, you know, multiple revisions with the town staff. And then at that point, you know, maybe a year from now, we begin clearing and erosion control and all the site work. That'll probably take another year to 18 months. So now we're 2.5 years out. And then you've got, you know, the construction of homes, which another year. So I'd say 3.5 to 4 years from where we are today, you would expect to see the first resident in this community. So again, I don't know the timeline of the new fire station, but that's kind of our very rough timeline, if that helps at all.
Do we have any updates about the fire station and what that potential build out could look like? Because I think that that's going to be a longer build out than 4 years, but maybe I'm operating under the assumption of
Sure.
information.
And when we get to our work session part, I'll give you an update tonight on that project. But I think even the most conservative estimates on occupying a fire station at this facility put us somewhere in the 3-year mark. We've seen those numbers have moved a little bit back and forth as we talk about construction, and looking into the future, and construction is obviously difficult, but we're somewhere in the 3-year mark for occupation. of that facility, should everything just fall right into place.
Okay, and so, can you give me like a potential guesstimate for how it's gonna happen in real life?
Not, that's, yeah,
That's fine, so.
And I'll just say, we rely on our partner, Wake County Facility Design. And
it's so tricky.
They know that industry so much better than I, for sure.
But they've given you a potential date of about 3 years?
Yeah, so, and to give you just a little bit of insight, as we continue to work through that project, they forecast how it could shake out, and the most recent versions put us somewhere in the 2026 timeframe.
Is there a way for us to delay COs until the fire station is operational? I don't know that answer because that was a question that just popped into my brain.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Clark?
Is it necessary to go into saying you're gonna stop a CO when it's so far down the road? I think, that may be something you want to do later, but I don't think that's something that needs to be discussed at this time.
Well, we don't down the road, why we just don't wait till the guy bun is ready to sell and give us interest to give them access to that from 96 Highway? If we do,
Then you might be waiting 30 years. The Bunn family might not let go.
right, that's what I'm saying. I mean, we're doing a lot of what ifs.
I think this is a good project.
I just think it's safe. I do too, but also there again, if they can purchase that easement or some right of way to that property from 96 Highway, it's something. If they even had the discussions, we don't know that, whether they had discussions or not with that landowner.
But if you put that property, it is in the watershed. So you can't build on it. You can't put a road on it.
Which property are you talking about, Bev, the one
When
to the north?
you cut through, on that road you were showing, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Road you were showing with the Bunn people on it. That one, that's in the watershed on up.
Correct. The watershed actually extends basically to the property boundary that's currently under contract.
So that all that is in watershed, that entire acres that the Bunns own is watershed, correct? That's what you tell us?
If I can pull up the right layer really quick.
And while Adam's pulling up that layer, there's certain things that you can do in a watershed. However, per our interlocal agreement with the city of Raleigh, will not allow for the connection into municipal water and sewer services. The property owner could potentially go to Wake County to request large lot subdivisions on well and septic, but just with our current interlocal agreement, we would not be able to bring those into the municipal system.
And just to point out, this map right here that shows the watershed, it does not take into account the modifications that were made to it with this sliver here.
What do you mean the
IMAPS
modification?
hasn't updated. That's really all that is. That map does not get regularly updated by IMAPS.
So even part of the property that they're trying to build on, according to this map, is in the watershed.
Which has been updated. So the watershed extends to the other side of this property boundary. Right now, IMAPS they don't update this layer regularly.
So it was in the watershed, but now they've determined that it's not in the watershed?
Just because of, I'm assuming, some of the grading on the site that is.
It's actually, I believe, I deal with IMAPs quite a bit, and nothing is an exact science with that, especially these layers. So we've actually had a field topographic survey done, and that's really how you determine where the watershed, it's called a ridge line survey, and it shows exactly where the ridge is. So we've performed that. That's how this boundary was born. The IMAPS is not the most accurate platform in the world.
Correct.
It's already clear cut, correct?
I believe it is, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
Are you saying from this map that all of the blue is in the watershed?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a big swath.
And so for us, that means that the way that is going to be able to develop out is going to be very different than the developments that we're seeing currently.
Yeah, the development potential of that area is severely limited.
Okay.
It's also part of the land that Wake County bought a vast majority of it for the reservoir or something like that. Correct? Thank you.
Any more questions from the board? Comments? Any comments from the developers? Staff?
I'll make one more, just also ask my fellow commissioners also remember that the planning board also voted against this 4-3-2 as well, so just, we did take that information into consideration as well. They voted against it.
Yeah, I know, but we also know why.
Yeah.
So what are our options?
Well, you have the option to approve as amended. You have the option to table and discuss more. You have the option to deny this. If the rezoning is denied, we would have to then rescind the annexation that occurred from the other meeting. So that's your, discussion of any additional conditions can happen at this time as well.
And as just point of a clarification, if you do table it, you have to keep the meeting open, because once you close the meeting, you don't have the capability to rescind the annexation.
And that's where we get into that tricky situation where we could have a piece of property that does not have zoning and the developer could do as they wish without any kind of approval from us.
Any more questions, comments? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we deny what's part of we had, the zoning rezoning? Deny the ordinance 2024-06.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
I still think this is the type of housing development we're looking for, and we're talking 87 homes, and there's going to be continuing development in that area. So I still think it's a good neighborhood, a good plan.
I don't disagree. I like the development.
I like the development.
I like the development. I like the housing style. I like the conditions that have been put in place.
I said we also take into consideration while we're discussing, okay, he gave us the other night, the price point for these homes would be $600,000 to $700,000. The average median income in Zebulon is $43,000. Where are these people coming from? Help me understand that
Well,
concept.
I think that if we want folks who are working in the triangle, if we want them to be moving out to Zebulon, then we've got to have housing for them, and this is currently a product that we don't have.
Yeah, and I mean, and I don't dislike this subdivision or the development. I just think that there are so many different factors, safety being one of the biggest things that comes. I don't dislike the development. I really like the houses. I like the design. Interested in them actually, but I'm not comfortable with where this development is with the safety and the different things that we have addressed in this. So I can't in good faith and good conscience say yes, even though I do like it, so.
Again, I just think we had one more interest in that. I would feel comfortable. The volume of traffic that you're gonna put on those few roads, yes, I saw 0.68 from coming in on Weaver's Pond Drive. But you didn't take a look at Yulee coming in from Pierce's Road. The only way to get there is either Lacewing or either Sage Street. You can look at it, and that's why I gave you an average of 1.5, basically a mile and a half just to get to the entrance. So with that said, that safety aspect of things is big right now. I mean, we look at that future reference, like I said, they're possibly gonna sell that land later on. We don't know whether the developer had a discussion to really try to purchase like an easement or something to get that, yes, it's watershed, but I believe we could figure that out, some other interest into that property. Because I really like the development as well. It's just that another interest would be way more beneficial and take the volume of traffic off those 3 roads that we know constantly cars are parked on, different things, a lot of different factors come into play with those 3 roads there.
When we take a look at the future transportation and land use map, as
Sorry,
far
I can't
as...
hear you.
Wow, that never happens. When we take a look at the future transportation and land use map, there are those stub streets, but is there anything that runs along the north side of Weaver's Pond that would skirt down through there so that in the future, if this were to be developed like in 30 years, like Bev has intonated might happen, that a street would be put in there to kind of act as a pressure valve for the whatever winds up getting built in that watershed area, as well as that particular development?
Yeah, without having it in front of me, there's widening and modifications to Farrow Road, but there is nothing that goes through that particular parcel due to the amount of development. However, in our Unified Development Ordinance, we do require collector streets to be included within neighborhoods based on the number of units that are being constructed as part of it. As an example, Weaver's Pond Drive is constructed to a collector street standard to meet that spirit and intent.
But when we talk about Farrow Road, we don't have, there's not going to be an opportunity to tap into Farrow Road according to what that map looks like right now, correct?
For this particular parcel, not at this time, but in the future, there could be a possibility if a Wake County subdivision is installed there. Wake County subdivisions would need to meet their standards as opposed to ours. However, there is always the possibility for additional connections in the future.
Can they ask for annexation if they're not getting, and still have to abide by the watershed rules?
No, I don't believe they can, due to we cannot provide services due to our interlocal agreement.
Well, we would be able to provide everything but water, right?
We would not be able to provide water or sewer into
Correct.
that area.
Correct.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, looking at it, there's the realignment of New Jack Mitchell Road as a north-south corridor, connecting into where Farrow Road meets 96, which would be expanded to a 2-lane median divided. In some cases, that median would turn into a left turn lane, and obviously any developments that are constructed along there would also have to do a transportation impact analysis to determine if there is additional improvements such as independent turn lanes, accel or decel lanes, to make sure that the connectivity into those individual neighborhoods, as well as the collective of the traffic that's flowing through there, operates in a safe, sufficient manner.
Right now, even tying into Farrow Road is a big if, because there again, you have a family that has land, they're not looking to sell anywhere on Farrow Road. You're looking at Milton Jones's land, you're looking at Connie Brayboy that owns that land. Those 2 spots, Farrow Road is pretty much tied up. That's why they can't really buy into Farrow Road. Neither family is looking to sell right now. That farmland is working fine for them. So in the future, how far, there again, in the future they may sell, but they're in the same predicament as the Bun. That's the biggest problem they're having now, is getting to that property, because nobody wants to sell on that road.
The other part to address Commissioner Baxter's question is one of the things that we require specifically because of these situations is their interconnectivity between neighborhoods. As Adam has drawn on the map, Weaver's Ridge, which is kind of a subphase of Weaver's Pond that has the townhome. That has a direct connection onto 96 from Glory Road, and it measures that .68 is from 96 to the entrance of the subject development. Realistically, that's going to be a far more efficient vehicle path for emergency services as opposed to going through Pippin and up Weaver's Pond Drive or Lacewing to Yulee.
Okay, so they could bypass that by going in through
Trace.
Weaver's Trace.
Yes.
And then going down Golden Plum to Weaver's Pond.
And Golden Plum was also constructed as a collector level street, which is why it connects into Pierce's Landing.
And then do we have an overlay somewhere, somehow, that shows what the build-out is going to look like with the Weaver's Pond Drive entrance, like how that road is gonna look? I can't
do not.
remember.
Referring to the area down here?
No,
Or you-
up into the proposed development.
Okay. The connection here,
Yeah,
yeah.
thanks.
So with that layout, look how far the house is back to the back. By the time you tie it
Yeah,
in.
but I mean, like, it's not, so if it's .68, so just under .7, and then the parcel that's all the way up in the far eastern corner, what would the distance be to there, are we thinking?
So looking from here, obviously, it's got to go up to roughly that connection there. And then I think it's stubbed back and, yeah. So that's .4 roughly. This
So
is,
1.12 miles, 1.1 miles. And then for emergency services to get to the entrance of Weaver's Trace,
Let's just do a distance from Vance Street, where the current fire station is, to that, since we have that.
well,
target.
I'd like to see both Vance Street as well as Judd Street. I mean, I still have concerns about how trucks are gonna be turning onto Arundel, but I guess that's for another discussion.
Commissioners, if I could just clarify something that I sent you in the context of what Mr. Clark has just mentioned. What I provided each of you was a historical perspective of travel times to that Golden Plum and north, and that's where our calculation was. And we looked at that on a 5-year period, over the last 5 years. We have yet to see the advantages of what the connection to Weaver's Trace, just because they have just, within the last month or two, opened those streets.
So
So
you
what
haven't
you
run
saw,
the
that's right,
numbers
the
from
numbers you
Weaver's
saw
Trace.
do
Okay.
not take to advantage that shorter route of travel. That we will see historically, as we get calls and Hopkins responds and assists us, we will get their data, that falls into ours, and we will see the impact of that. But the data that I sent you, I just want to be clear, the data I sent you does not include a connector to Weaver's Trace.
So 4.7 miles, chief. What might that be in minutes, knowing that you're gonna have to be traveling down 96, which is super busy 5,000 anymore?
Right. I think the difficulty comes, and this was kind of hard to explain in my email, so I'm glad you asked that question because I get a chance to explain it. The difficulty is much unlike Google or Waze or whatever, it's difficult for us to say this many miles equals this much of a travel time, because we're not always at the fire station. For one, we may be located in other places, leaving another call. Traffic conditions is another. Time of day is another. And that's why I suggested we pull that historical call data. I think our historical call data, which showed that that area and above, if memory serves me, it was right at 7 minutes. I think that would be consistent. I'm not, Weaver's Trace may improve that just a little, especially these areas. It'll definitely improve it on the Hopkins side. So there, because we just moved, that's a significantly closer route for Hopkins than it is for us. We respond jointly. That means a fire truck pulls up in your driveway in front of your house quicker. But I would say that the times that I sent you are going to be probably pretty close. But you even saw in the email I sent, distributed to the commissioners, there was like a 4-minute of difference between the quickest we got there and the longest. That is the best illustration of time of day, where we're coming from. All that affects travel time. So I don't know if that helps or not, but I'll be glad to follow up if I need to go any further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I was chatting with my client. I think we would be inclined, recognizing that kind of as you move into the development, even with the construction of this new road, you do have to take a left at Yulee and then take a right off of Yulee. I think we would be fine with putting a condition on the case that's saying that we wouldn't pull any COs for homes north of Yulee within 7 years of approval of the rezoning case, which should give ample time to get the fire station relocated and built. If that's all right with you, we would be inclined to offer that as a condition. So no permits for homes north of Yulee within 7 years of the approval of the rezoning case.
I'm willing to accept that condition. Thank you.
Very well.
Comments?
Oh, one modification, my client. It's the earlier of 7 years or the opening of the fire station.
Okay.
Fair.
We have a motion.
Yeah, do you want to?
A motion to disapprove in a second.
Mary? Okay, we've got to vote then.
So we still want to keep that motion in that second?
Motion stands.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Commissioner Laux?
Not in favor.
Commissioner Harrison?
Favor.
Commissioner Clark?
No, not in favor. Sorry. Not
What are we
in
in
favor.
favor?
We're voting on your motion
Gotcha.
to disapprove.
Gotcha.
Commissioner Clark?
Not in favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Favor.
Commissioner Baxter?
Not in favor.
Motion does not pass.
I would like to approve ordinance 20. Can you speak into the mic, please? Yep, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 2024 -06 with the added condition of no COs past Yulee Drive for 7 years or until the fire station is built.
Okay.
We have a motion. We have a second. Commissioner Clark. Discussion?
I say to my fellow commissioners, put yourself on that back end, your mom back there, your dad back there, your sister, your brother, and EMS can't get to them in that time frame.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Baxter?
In favor.
Commissioner Miles?
Not in favor.
Commissioner Clark?
Favor?
Deny.
Commissioner Harrison? Commissioner
In
Laux?
favor. In favor.
Motion passes.
Do we have John here? Because wasn't he supposed to come talk to us?
No, that got moved.
We said the first regular meeting, September.
Oh, okay. I just put the next meeting instead of,
You made that clarification.
but I didn't write it down.
Okay.
So, all right.
Are we at,
Board
We still have
okay,
to
yeah,
do
yeah. Board comments.
board
comments.
comments.
Board receipt. Oh, no.
The Parks and Rec was moved to the September regular scheduled meeting. The resolution for the chamber. Now we're down to board comments.
4 quick items. I want to thank everyone for the great work on the Rock the Block back on August the 11th, and remind everybody the next one is Friday, September the 8th. Second of all, I would also like to thank the board members. We were recognized as part of the Main Street program. I want to thank all the commissioners and mayor for attending the Main Street Conference that we had up in Statesville. A lot of time was spent up there. It's a good project. I would also like that at the our next retreat, which is on August 24th, that we add the budget discussion. We had talked about having the budget discussion at this meeting, and for some reason it's not on the agenda. So as a reminder, let's add that for the retreat on August 24th. And also remind all the citizens, we do have openings on the Planning Board and the Board of Adjustments, and please investigate, apply, get involved. We need your input. Thank you.
Commissioner Baxter.
Please come back to me.
Commissioner Miles.
No comments.
Commissioner Harrison.
Thank you.
And I think we also have some positions on the Parks and Rec Advisory Board as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. Also, I want to relay my sentiments for Rock the Block as well. The week of August 20th, which is next week, 20th through the 26th, is Educator Appreciation Week that the Zebulon Chamber of Commerce has put in play for our local educators, and there are some local businesses that are giving our educators discounts and things off. So please visit the Chamber's website for that information, as well as a lot of back-to-school events. If you have students that need school supplies or anything like that, there's a lot of things going on in town. Also want to send a kudos out to our new communications director, Caleb. Caleb has been doing a great job with putting information on our town's Facebook page, letting our residents and citizens know the things that are going on. Commissioner Miles mentioned earlier about the median family income in Zebulon and where it is, and there has been a post made to our town Facebook about the Wake County Rehabilitation Grant that can help our residents that may be going through a time of need with their housing. So I just want to urge all residents to please continue to follow us on Facebook and look out for those things that may be able to help you. And thank you, Caleb. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark.
Just a concern of mine is that finance requested our paid tax thing from 1922. And I know there was some discussion and some people were upset about it. And I was just wondering what kind of problem it is, because, you know, it's public record. I can see it, any of it, so.
So are we discussing?
Discussing?
Why we had any issue?
This commissioner comments, we have to put it on the agenda to discuss it. Do it's an open meeting,
This is my comment. Why? I'm asking somebody to give me an answer then. How many have turned it in? Mine's there. Did other people send it in?
This is something, according to the auditor, whom I spoke with, that they normally pull. And she was actually very surprised that Bobby put that out there as something that we were responsible for doing. Now, from what I have come to understand, it's because in some municipalities, the board can forgive tax bills. That is not anything that we do here. So it's kind of ridiculous that it's being asked for, but if that's something that they want to do, then that's fine. It's part of public record, and they can pull all of that. As for whether or not we pay our utility bills, that seems strange to me, because if I don't pay my utility bill, my utilities get shut off. That's kind of how it works. And we are also not in the business of forgiving people's utility bills. And so for me, because I did have a question about that, for me personally, it's like, just go and pull it. It's part of public record. We have enough that we're doing, and they were doing it anyway. They've done it, they did it last year, although I did contact quite a few elected officials from other municipalities, and this is not anything that their municipality does, so I'm not sure why the auditors that we contracted with are asking for this information, since we don't forgive people's tax bills, we don't forgive or care about whether or not people are paying their electric bill or their utility bills. Everyone pay your bills and your taxes, that's important. But as far as like making it a record request for us, it seems silly. First, that it's even happening, since it doesn't really apply to us, but also since it's an easy point and click for them, and they did it last year. Now we're being asked to do it this year, and even the auditor herself was like, I have no idea why Bobby is making you guys do this. That's why it was something that I had questions about, because trying to understand.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, you're saying the external auditor specifically said they were not requesting it?
The external auditor said, well, we're starting to do it for municipalities that can forgive tax bills.
Because wasn't the request only for Wake County property tax bills,
Yes,
which the town can't forgive anyhow?
correct. So it makes it made no sense to me, which is why I had a question about, why are you even bothering us with this information? You know, like with this question, because we can't forgive Wake County tax bills. And it's not happening in any of the other municipalities whose elected officials I spoke with, because I was like, well, maybe it's a thing. I'll ask. And it's not really a thing. It's a thing for us, I guess.
It's kind of like some of these bills that we have that you look at them and you wonder why these bills are even being addressed, and it's usually specified for certain particular area, but it's a bill out there like a blanket bill or whatever. Some municipalities have had issues in the past because they own their utilities. So if you own your utilities, you have, I guess, there was some discrepancies of them not charging folks. And
I would be more concerned, like, if something was happening internally and people were not, like, because it would have to come before us, and then we would have to forgive a tax bill, and like, I mean,
in other words,
if Commissioner Harrison were to come before us and say, I don't want to pay taxes, and then we would have to vote on it, like, that just seems absolutely ridiculous. So, I mean, like, the fact that we were being asked to provide information that didn't kind of, like, make sense was why I asked.
So as a matter of clarification, we just needed to understand why we were being asked for that. Although it could have been pulled as public record, it was asked. I appreciate it being asked instead of it just being pulled, but I do understand, like, it was something simple. But as a point of clarification, now we know. So thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
He gave us an excuse, said he based it on Rocky Mount or something like that. I
Yeah,
don't know.
Rocky Mount, there
Yeah,
was an
they own their
issue.
utilities.
Yeah,
But they
we
own their
don't.
utilities.
And
And so, I mean, but if you rent, then you don't have to worry about it. And if you rent and you are not paying utilities, then you don't have to submit anything.
any other comments, Commissioner Clark?
Nope.
Commissioner Miles?
No, sir.
Commissioner Baxter?
So I think that what Commissioner Laux is suggesting is that further board adjustments be pushed to the 24th. Is that what you were
That's
saying,
correct.
instead of addressing them tonight? All right. We've had some great popsicles in the park. We've got Cops and Bobbers coming up. We've got quite a few cool activities. And speaking of cool, when it is super hot in and around Wake County has several cooling centers in the town of Zebulon. You may go to the public library off of Dogwood, as well as the Eastern Regional Center. So if you don't have air conditioning, or you are in a situation where your home is very, very hot, those two places are established by Wake County as cooling centers. If you go there and there is absolutely no room, we have a community center, and I would be very, very surprised if someone were to turn you away in the extreme heat if there was room for you to hang out in the community center when it is dire and hot. In addition, during business hours, the doors here are open and we have chairs downstairs. So people can legally be in here if it's super hot out. Even though we have managed to get through quite a bit of hurricane season with, I know, sorry, here. On wood. It's super important to have a preparedness plan and to make sure that you run and maintain your generators if you have them. Keep your chainsaws oiled and the blades sharpened, because if we do have some kind of major weather event, I'd like to know that all of the citizens are prepared. One of the things that I did get in feedback from several people about Rock the Block was that they didn't see a police presence. And I'd just like to make the statement that we actually had quite a few police officers that were present that evening. They did walk throughout the crowd, but it just wasn't as big of a forward-facing presence. They were on the periphery of the event, which I think was appropriate, but we are not going to put forth an event and not have adequate police as well as fire presence to make sure that everyone is safe. So I'm sure that maybe if we need to have someone walking through just so people can see a face, that we will do that, but we did have quite a few officers that were present at that event.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that the official grand opening of our new True Value Hardware store, ribbon cutting, is tomorrow from 12 o'clock. Come out and support that. And they also have some things where they are donating to support the Boys and Girls Club also. And back on July 23rd, we lost a pillar in the community, Miss Gladys Juanita Todd. I did a proclamation at her homegoing service, and which I will read now. Proclamation Gladys Juanita Todd, September 30th, 1932, July 12th, 2003. Whereas on September 30th, Gladys Juanita Reed was born in Baltimore, Maryland, to Reed and Stanford Gout. Whereas Gladys Reed met Griffin Todd, and they were married in 1950 when she was just 17 years old. Whereas Gladys and Griffin made their home in Zebulon, raised 7 children, and were married for 64 years before Griffin's passing in 2014. And whereas in 1960, they opened Todd's Drive-In, where at that time was the only black-owned restaurant in the community. And whereas Griffin and Gladys farmed 88 acres for many years and passed their love to the land onto their children. Whereas Gladys Todd was an advocate by working at the Anti-Poverty Agency and by speaking in Washington, D.C. at the Congressional Black Caucus hearing in 1997 about the Agriculture Department's loan discrimination practices. Whereas Gladys' advocacy was also seen directly in her community by helping and founding members of the Concerned Citizens Organization in 1987 and Camp I Can, just to name a few. Whereas Gladys' faith was very important to her, and she was very active in her church and shared her faith regularly. Therefore, I, Glenn L. York, Mayor, Town of Zebulon, North Carolina, do hereby recognize Gladys Juanita Todd for her selfless giving to the community, her advocacy to help residents in Zebulon and surrounding communities, and her love for God and family. Signed the 16th day of July, 2023, Mayor Glenn L. York. Next, we will have the Board of Commissioners addition, Manager's Review. Commissioner Baxter.
Yes, thanks. So, as part of our yearly process, in August, we are tasked with the manager's performance review. The current review documents that we have are very, very outdated. They were kind of cobbled together with not the longevity that I think that they were expecting that this document would move forward with. Plus now we are a town of 10,000 people, and so this document needs to be adjusted. Different questions need to be placed on as part of the review so that we can make sure that we are getting the information that we need in order to, do the review at the end of August. This has been pushed back. I'm sure that we have questions that we would like to add. There might be some that need to come off, but we were instructed that this was a process that needed to happen in open session because we're not discussing any particular performance aspects that the manager has or hasn't done or any of that. We're just determining what type of questions need to be a part of the review.
I think, may I speak, sir?
Commissioner Clark.
I think we have our review, and I think maybe this is not the time to be changing it when it's already past due. It really should be done. It should be finished.
Yes, but we've been trying to talk about this for a while, and it's irresponsible of this board.
One at a time, please. Commissioner Clark.
This is not the time to redo a review. I think it is something that we need to do, and I think it needs to be done in a work session where we can all talk and get it done and focus on it. I think for right now, since we've been late for the past 3 years, that we ought to go ahead and use what we've got, and then as we're doing it, make note of things that we need to change.
Commissioner Clark, this is a work session. And
This is
if
not a
you,
work
if
session,
you,
we're on- Okay, no, okay, I'm just not saying.
Finish. Commissioner Baxter?
It's not a work-
if you would like for us to move it off of right here, and then I will add it to our work session agenda when Commissioner Harrison is not going to be present to participate, we can do that. But I think that her voice is important, and she should be allowed to contribute.
Oh, don't put, I'm good, I'm fine. Y'all continue, please.
I just think we need to go ahead and do what we need to do now, get this done, and then come September 1st, redo the whole thing.
Commissioner Laux?
One question on the due date. I have a package in front of me that has two different due dates for the evaluation. One says August 30th and one says September the 11th.
The 30th was the due date. The 11th is like possible session that we would meet to discuss it.
That's not what mine says, Mayor.
Okay, so that needs to be clarified.
So you would like the copy to you by August 30th?
Yes.
Right, and then I have a paper copy. Will an electronic one be provided so I can
Yeah.
fill it out?
Yeah, you
Super.
can do it electronically also.
So it
And-
needs to be returned to you August 30th, not September 11th?
August 30th.
As we discussed, I'm kind of curious, what makes us always late? What is that keeps us, where we're 3 years, as Commissioner Clark stated, 3 years has been late?
Well-
What is that thing, we know ample amount of time in advance of this thing is due, like 3 years, I don't think it's fair to the town manager either, that we constantly, he's kind of like left in
Well,
limbo.
he
What is
didn't
it?
fill his out
Okay.
in enough time.
Okay.
So, I mean, like,
Yeah,
that's
we-
part of it,
Yeah,
so.
we want to move forward once we get the self-evaluation. And we just got that. So,
Okay, so
So this
we've
is-
received the self-evaluation, and are we in agreement that we are going to tailor this to our community like, in the not-too-distant future? This really can't wait. These
Absolutely.
are antiquated questions that a lot of them don't pertain to where we are right now.
what I would recommend, if you have any questions for the manager's performance, you just include those questions in your comments, in your review.
All right, but we do need to create this document.
Yes, I agree. You know, we can always
mean-
revise what we have and have a better packet, but at this point, it's, you know, we had a whole year to come up with a better evaluation, you know, and we didn't do it. So it's a little tight at this point to try to redo it and then get it done. And it's just going to push it further and further out. If you have questions that you would like for the manager to address, then include that.
Okay, we can move forward with it like that, but I'm going to ask that at our next work session, that this be a topic so that we get it done.
Of course.
In addition, I think that this is going to be off topic, so I won't.
Any other questions, comments concerning the review? Commissioner Miles?
No, sir, I'd just like to be made known that right after the last review for the manager, I sent out an email to all of my fellow commissioners where we could address that and so we could set the tempo. We're kind of giving them a blank slate to run off of. I think we need to set standards.
Yeah.
So that I did send an email out to everybody so we could address that at that time frame. I didn't get a response, so therefore now we're sitting in the predicament that we're in. So therefore we move forward from the information given.
I agree. I agree. Commissioner Clark?
No comment. I
Commission-
agree we need to do it.
Commissioner Harrison?
No.
Commissioner Laux?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Next, we had is that the August retreat? Have we already discussed that, or?
No, we haven't.
No, we
Okay.
haven't.
Commissioner Baxter?
So we are asked to attend many retreats throughout the year, and they're pretty much day-long events where we have to clear our schedule for an entire day. And I have several concerns about that. First, we don't know the topic of the retreat. And we've attended retreats where we've had information that was not useful to us, that didn't pertain to us. And we have a lot that we need to accomplish now that we are a larger municipality. So I would like to have input and be given more information about like retreats prior to when they happen. Also, as we are a growing municipality and there's the possibility that we are going to be a board of people that have day jobs that won't necessarily accommodate taking quite as many full days off without people dipping into their personal vacation time. I think that we need to consider, do we move retreats to the weekend? Do we move retreats to a different time? Do we consolidate retreats? We have an awful lot of mini retreats, and we used to just have one retreat. Now, do we maybe have more information that needs to get to us in a retreat manner? I don't know. Maybe we need 2 retreats. But I feel like we're not going to be making it feasible to be a commissioner in this community if we're asking people that have 9-to-5 jobs to take vacation days or personal days for retreats. Now, some people might say that's the cost that you pay when you sign up to become a commissioner. I'd just like us to have some dialogue about it.
Yeah, I think that, Mayor,
Commissioner Harrison?
I think that retreats are helpful. As someone who has full-time and works and has to take off and schedule work, I have never had an issue with doing it because as a public servant, I have yet, and I'm not saying people don't, but I have yet to run into a supervisor that has had an issue with me doing the service that I asked to do. So I'm not having those same issues or concerns, so I can't, so just, that's my feedback. I'm fine with the retreats and the mini retreats during the day. I actually prefer them during the day.
Commissioner Miles?
I pick it back out here because Commissioner Harrison, like I said, great that you have an opportunity, a job that goes where, that allows that time frame.
Right.
Now, but we're in a position now, we hit that infamous mark of 10,000. We have to think beyond the now. If we want to make sure we have target different types of commissioners, opportunity, we really need to really think about this thing, how we're going to do it. Like I said, for the future, like currently with the election coming up, we have ranging from somebody that's an engineer to a principal to whatever, all running now. So those doors are going to be, they can't get off work like that. So we really have to think about beyond now. The current board, we all blessed. We're either retired, work for ourselves, got our nonprofits or whatever it may be, but we really have to think beyond now. I think that's what you're kind of getting at. Like I said, I don't think it's to kind of take away from the current board, but we're looking beyond the now. That's what I think.
Right, and understanding that, that's why I can appreciate how our dates are given to us a year in advance. And I understand that, even in that, everyone does not have the flexibility, the same as some other conversations that we've had when we talk about future boards, not just this board. So that's just my feedback, for moving forward. We get our dates so far in advance, the same as, how we plan out other things. So we know things come up, meetings come up. But from my aspect and being, having a different kind of demographic or background or family setup, it has worked. I have been able to make it work for myself.
But I think for you, prime example would be like tonight, like I said, stuff comes at the last minute. You're gonna have to do this, kind of remove yourself. So we have to figure out what we can do as a board to kind of get to address those issues.
Just
Because
like tonight, how we all have had to take some time off to
Right.
have to leave. So I hear what y'all are saying though. Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
Yeah, because
sure.
like Commissioner Miles was saying, you're leaving us after we finish up this agenda and you won't be here for the work session.
Right.
And so like we have to just think about the fact that maybe that's going to be 6 or 8 days that someone may have to take off in the future, vacation or personal days, in order to fulfill their duties to the town. I'm just putting it out there for discussion right now because I think that it needs to be something that we think about.
Yeah, and fortunately, I do have to leave. Well, Commissioner Laus wasn't here Monday, and no one had made any comments about him not being here Monday night. But, so moving forward, the same way we were able to pull it up on YouTube and get enough information and be able to provide the feedback that he was able to provide with not being here. I feel like moving forward, since we do have this amazing new communications people, we are moving forward, looking at remote meetings. I think that is something that we definitely should have a conversation about, but we want to make sure that we keep in the forefront of our conversation the flexibility that we've all been able to utilize when it relates to meetings and work sessions.
I think we've had the discussion, like I said, it's been a topic for a while now. That's what I said, because we know, like I said, we do get it in advance, but life happens.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're trying to figure out. Like I said, it wasn't trying to, I don't want you to think they was trying to call you out like for you have to leave. That's totally, you know what I'm saying, understandable.
not you. I don't think so.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah, that was
No.
totally understandable. Because a lot of things happen, but I think now we're in the position, we have to think beyond the now. We're no longer that small town where you say you come in, grab your agenda and go. We have to think beyond the now. We're thinking for people that we'll never see, you know what I'm saying, that we'll never deal with, commissioners that we'll never know. But we're setting the pace, and it's our job to do that now, and it's key right now. So we're gonna have to have those discussions, those hard topics at timeframes, but we're okay with that. I think as the current board that we have, we can work through this thing and figure it out and move forward and think beyond ourselves. It's that selfless service that we're here for.
And I do want to apologize if you feel like I was calling you out. You just happen to be the person tonight that is not going to be here for the rest of the meeting. And Larry, we already talked about his absence when he was here, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Any other discussion, comments from the board?
I think we just keep the mayor, no, I'm joking.
I'm gonna take me a vacation.
Right. As are we all.
It's called wellness.
Mental health is important.
Next on the agenda is the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm going to expand upon what I had planned to talk about based upon some of the conversations that you all have just had, and this is very good conversations and conversations you need to have. The first thing I'll talk about is the mini retreats, and I only offer this as far as context to help you arrive at what is going to work best for you all. You, in the past, before this board was in place, you would have a 2-day-long retreat at a location in another town. With your lives, being able to take off for 2 successive days, that's something that you may want to consider about. Do you do something like that, or do you continue to have the day-long events? So that's one thing for you all to consider. The other thing to consider is you are a growing town. And so you were put before you, we as staff put before you as an option, as a way to, rather than going off for 2-day retreats in the fall and the spring, to break that out into day-long events, or majority of day-long from 9 to 3 in town, so you could take on all these topics. And a lot of these topics are, they're staff originated, based upon things that we see are coming your way. They are things that are being driven because your mini retreat next week is an example of this, where it's in the cycle, meaning you have to revisit your comprehensive land use and transportation plan. So that's why we're coming back to you next week. So it's either things that we're seeing in the community and we have to get in front of you, or they're due course. That said, It's your time. Y'all are the commissioners. If you feel and you can drive at consensus on things that you think we need to talk about, that's why we as staff are here. So if you all can have discussions like this, come up with topics that you think at least a majority of you feel as though you need to talk about that, then get it to us, and we will structure the retreats that way. So hopefully that gives you some context about how some towns do retreats, how you are doing retreats differently to meet the demands of your work-life balance, as well as you are a growing town, so we have to give you a lot more topics to discuss, and also to understand that if you think that there's something driving that we need to talk about, then you can, it doesn't have to be a one-way street. It's a two-way street, and you can share with us. So that's what I wanted to share on the mini retreats. On the self-evaluation, Commissioner Miles asked a question, and in fairness, I don't think it's accurate to say it was all based upon the tardiness of the self-evaluation. I'm not going to get into details, but I don't think it's accurate to say that. I just want to clarify that. Self-evaluation was turned in this year. It is 2 weeks past the review time. I was told to hold up on it because I thought there was going to be, or was told that there was going to be a new instrument, but it's in your hands now. That 2 weeks delay is clearly on me. I don't think the delay in past reviews, however, is entirely on the delay of the self-evaluation. And in fairness, I wanted to share that with the group. I also wanted to clarify what I'll call some characterization of Bobby. So I had the chance to talk to our auditor, Ms. Bagasala, after she had a conversation with Commissioner Baxter, and I wasn't privy to the conversation, so maybe she did or did not say that she was surprised about what Bobby did or didn't do, and I'm not going to interject or make judgment on that. But I want to be real clear about why Bobby did what he did. And the reason he did it is because he received a request from the auditor, and Bobby asked me what to do, and I said, pass it on to you all, okay? So the reason Bobby did that is because he got a request from the auditor, and I said for him to send it on to you, okay? So if there's any grievance with that process, then most notably it's with me, not with Bobby. Cooling stations, we're gonna talk about that. I asked Chief Perry to incorporate that into his quarterly report. I want to be real clear with not only the board, but more importantly with the community. Absolutely, we are public buildings, and to Commissioner Baxter's point, if someone's feeling hot, come in, out, and to a cool place. Our public buildings, you can go into there. But I want to be very careful about what we advertise as cooling stations and what is not a cooling station. Cooling stations carry a designation and a responsibility with them. And I would not want to put out the impression that a facility is a cooling station and we're not really set up to handle a particular emergency, because that is a dangerous thing to do. Again, Chief Perry will speak to that.
But there's 2 in Wake County.
Yes.
In the town.
So to that point, if there are services out there, and Chief Perry will speak to this, we will absolutely promote that. So Commissioner Laux brought up a point that he was surprised that it wasn't on the budget discussion wasn't on the agenda. So one thing I'll share is everything that I said that I would do as far as budget adjustments, that was accomplished tonight. All the rollovers, all the things you said as far as you wanted increases in things like travel and training, that, as an example, I rolled that in. Now, if there's something above and beyond that you all want to talk about it, this is absolutely the way to do it. Have a discussion, talk about adding it as an agenda item to whatever meeting that you want to. It also gives some clarification to staff on that this is a consensus of the board and gives us a sense of what you want to talk about. So if you do want to talk about budget amendments, the reason it's not on there is because we didn't see that as direction, and that's not something that I offered. The things that you did talk about and the things that I did say I would deliver, you effectively made those changes to the budget with what you approved on the consent agenda tonight. Okay, so I wanted to talk about those were a lot of things that came up as you all were discussing. Now, as far as the things that I had planned to talk about, we as we do every month, have a development update. You'll have a human resources update. I've asked Sheila Long to provide a Parks and Rec update, and I was going to introduce who is, it's no surprise, but you all have seen him. I was going to introduce to the board and the community Caleb Harmon. So first things first, let me recognize Michael Clark for a development update.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Quick adjust this a little bit. As always, best source to provide information regarding what is going on in Zebulon is the town's interactive development map. As a reminder, going to the planning page on the town's website, scrolling down to interactive development map, and then the easiest way to fully access it is view dashboard in full screen, and then this creates the opportunity for a much larger view as opposed to the small screen. For the purposes tonight, I'm going to expand out the map portion using the 4 arrows in the upper right-hand corner. A couple items of note. First and foremost, we've been working with the developers for what was formerly known as Dory Meadows, now known as Chambly Lake. They're trying to complete the final corrections details based on the technical review committee for residential development at this location. Their goal is to come before you at the September joint public hearing to move that process forward. In addition to Chambly Lake, the Zebulon Animal Hospital, which is located at the corner of Green Pace and Arundel, is also looking to come before you for joint public hearing in September. Obviously, subject to the planning board's recommendations, the earliest they could get before you for decision would be October. A couple other items of note. Let's see. There's been some question regarding activity in downtown. There's one of the businesses has actually moved locations. Fitness 360 moved up a few doors. The work for Norris Longhouse has already begun. You've probably seen contractors coming and going. Additionally, there's work being done in accordance with the upfit and demolition permits pulled for Lounge 96, which was the former Tobacco Barn location in downtown. We do understand that there's been quite a bit of question regarding what's going to go into the old Barham's building. It's my understanding, the town's understanding, that there has been a new owner, or at least the property's under contract, but we do not know what that end result will be. We've heard speculation that it's going to be a couple different types of restaurants. However, nobody's actually formally applied request as of yet. In terms of the development, last but not least,
Please let it be Popeyes.
everybody's favorite question.
Let it be Popeyes.
It's Popeyes.
Seriously. Sheesh.
Somebody's in there.
Yeah,
Yes, there's active hiring and training going on inside the site. Once again, the town issued their certificate of occupancy almost 2 months ago, which essentially says the development process is completed from the town's perspective. Have fun. Make sure you invite us to your grand opening.
Way to dodge the bullet, right? Way to dodge it. That's good.
Does anybody have any questions regarding the development update before I move on to the preview of the planning elements that you're going to see at the mini retreat next week?
So I just want to, for clarity, we do not have a date of when Popeyes will be opening as of yet.
That is correct. The
Okay.
town has not been notified of a grand opening date for Popeyes.
Thank you.
And for clarity, the town is not holding up Popeyes from opening.
That too is correct. The town is not in any capacity that I or any of the other department heads are aware of is holding up the opening of Popeyes.
Thank you.
One last thing, I guess, clarity for a second. Did we run any businesses away? Have we ran any businesses away from downtown?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay,
No, we have several businesses that have development reviews in place, all of which are available on the interactive development map. And if somebody does have questions regarding any of these items, please do not hesitate to call the planning department. We'll be more than happy to explain any information that we do have. The planning department and my staff is the best resource for conveying information regarding what is or what is not coming to Zebulon.
Thank you.
Is there a reason that we changed the name changed for Dory Meadows? I didn't ask the other day in that meeting. Is there a reason why did we change the name of that?
That's going to be a great question for the joint public hearing for the applicant.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions before I move on to the preview for the work session? Yes.
Yeah, so the development on South Arundel, where is that currently?
That is currently kind of on hold. We've been informed that the developer is still intending to move forward, but has not provided any documentation or communication to the town since their first submittal. The first submittal was reviewed by our technical review committee. Comments were provided back. We had a TRC meeting, and then they went pretty silent after that.
And so how long, could you bring it up so that
Sure.
folks can see where it is? So how long ago did they start the process, and about when did it stall? Because I haven't seen any, makes sense, I haven't seen anything different.
Yeah, the plans were created. The plans were submitted last November.
Yeah, it's South.
Was there any other questions regarding development or development
So
updates?
if they move forward, they won't be subject to the utility allocation plan.
I have to double check to see when that was approved, but if any version of it was approved before they submitted a complete application, in accordance with North Carolina General Statute Permit of Choice regulations, the regulations that were in place as of the date of application apply for the duration unless they choose to completely switch over to the new.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Next week, you'll have, as part of the mini retreat, let me go back. You'll have a preview on what smart growth is. We have 3 foundational elements of the 2030 strategic plan. Growing smart is one of them. As such, we're going to provide an in-depth detail of what it is, and more importantly, how it's applicable to Zebulon and where we transition moving forward. Following that, and as a part of smart growth, is having quality education. We're going to have staff from Wake County Public Schools out to provide information, presentation, and details on what things they look for in site selection. We've also provided updates regarding some of the concerns that we've heard regarding transportation, timing of when schools are going to be open, and they're going to be looking to some of their staff to provide resources and updates and clarification, being that it sounds like there's some misunderstandings of when things will occur, when things won't, and potentially the usage of a parcel that they recently acquired here within the town of Zebulon. Finally, we're going to transition those 2 foundational elements into the 2-year comprehensive land use and transportation plan updates. In the implementation section of our transportation plan, or of our land use plan, it calls for these developments to be reviewed after a 2-year. This is not a full rewrite, just an update. So we'll provide details of why we're doing it, kind of the parameters that are outlined in our existing land use plan of what we need to look at, the 4 subject areas that we're going to use for the public engagement sessions, along with the anticipated timeline of when you could see this back before you for potential approval. You'll have a joint public hearing and approval just like a development plan, and then eventually what the anticipated translation will be into text amendments to your UDO. Everything in terms of a text amendment to the UDO really needs to be reflected back onto the comprehensive land use and transportation plan, so it's critical that we get these right. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
So with this review, are we actually looking at subject properties? Because I know that when I've looked at some of the properties that are affected by the transportation and land use plan that we put into place, a couple years ago, sometimes we run into situations where like they have a road going through an area that actually has a pretty deep pond, and it doesn't make sense to have the road located where it currently is. And I know sometimes it's just like, let's get lines on a piece of paper so that we can get it to the state, so that we can start pursuing funding and things like that. But are we going to be looking at property level, or what exactly is the scope?
It's not going to be to the level of that. The transportation plan, and specifically the CTP map, is really connecting point A to point B in a logical path. Those need to be field addressed as developments occur, because you run into conditions and situations where it doesn't make sense, such as going through a deep pond. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that those are adapted on a site-by-site basis, and the only way to really do that is to have it reflected based on engineered level drawings, which only come as part of the development process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, thank you.
Now recognize Lisa Markland to give the personnel update, and just as a heads up as well, next week's mini retreat will also include a human resources component focused specifically on our health insurance.
And you stole my thunder. So we're adding stuff to the agenda?
No, this
Then-
is the,
No,
this
No,
is,
for the mini retreat. So,
Oh, okay, thank you.
You know, we have multiple positions in various stages of the process with what you guys approved during the budget and those kinds of things. So planning currently has 3 positions that are being advertised. We've got 2 planner 1 positions and 1 code enforcement. When you look at these, they're closing on various different dates. The police department has 3 openings, and so we're hoping to revise our advertisement for that as well. Caleb has been working with us to create recruitment videos and various things that we're going to be using in the future. So we're really appreciative of all the help that he's giving us with that. Parks and Recreation, athletics coordinator position closed. That'll be interviewing soon. The recreation assistant for the community center is open. Public Works has an equipment operator 1 and an equipment operator 2 position open. They are open until filled at this point in time. One of the things that we're running into is that we're not getting the applications that we would like to see. We're getting a lot of people looking at the advertisements. You know, the planner 2 or planner 1 position, it's had 948 hits, but 26 people have applied. So we've got to figure out what the draw is. We're obviously getting them to look at the job, but they're not applying for the job. So what is the reasoning? And we've been working with several HR departments across Wake County and in our labor shed with the League of not League, but
School
Triangle
government.
J. It changed its name, I don't remember what it is now. It changed the name, but Triangle J. And so they have pulled together a group of HR directors, talk about the various things they're running into and how they can work with us and help us get information that would be helpful. We are doing a lot of research looking at our labor shed and comparing positions within the labor shed. What are they being paid, you know, and those types of things. So, and that will probably come back in September or a later work session to review that information with you. And we will be talking about insurance at the works, or the retreat, mini retreat.
Thank you, Lisa.
Any questions?
I got a question.
Miles?
Hearing all the kind of like the job announcements we have, that's great. What I'd like to get a better understanding is kind of like how that HR flows. Once we announce that job, it goes to the department, where it goes from the department to the announcement. I would like to get a better understanding of how that HR flows, like once we do it. Because I give an example of what I know, that's working for the federal government. That was like a, I guess, a filtering process. Once those applications come in, it's filtered. What is our filtering process before we get to that department head? Is that the department heads making that final decision and kicking it back to HR, or is HR making that decision and pushing it back to, I mean, how is that? I would like to get a better understanding of that.
All right, so our process from beginning to end is, we have a hiring process, and we ask everyone to fill that out for a full-time position. And it starts with your dates. You know, when do you want it to run? What's the start date for running the application? What is, how long do you want it to run for? Do you want it run 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 weeks? So we put that information in there. We put time in there for, you know, reviewing applications, getting them to the staff, for them to review, setting up interviews, the whole process to the very, you know, this is the target start date. So it goes through that whole process. When it comes to the narrowing down the field, some of it depends on the number of applications. If we don't have a lot of applications, you know, the directors have asked that I pass them all through, so I do. It really just depends on that. The job description is a big piece of it. We look at the job description, we look at the supplemental questions, if any of them are submitted, and how they stack up with those particular pieces. Then it goes to the directors, and I will be probably more lenient because I am not the subject matter expert in all of these departments. So I may pass some through that they go, no, they're just not the person. But if I'm unsure, I'll pass it through. I let them make the final decision of who is interviewed, because they are the subject matter experts. We pull together a panel to interview. There's always someone from HR, and we always try to bring in someone from the outside as well, so that we have a good variety of people. Depending on the position, it may be an assessment center. It may be a modified type of assessment center that is not as in-depth like we use for our directors, that Steve Strauss does and those kinds of things. But you know, there could be a written piece that's used to narrow down. Each of the directors have their own way of how they like to narrow down. They have spreadsheets and criteria and all of the different pieces. And then it's interviewed, and we talk and try to come to a consensus, and then that information is brought back to the manager so that he's aware of what's going on.
Okay, thank you. With that said, so make sure I understand. So the applications are given to HR. HR kind of ciphers and filters out, this is what I'm going to send to the department heads. Why is it that the department heads are not given all the applicants and let them do the weed out, being that, as you stated, HR is not the subject matter experts? Wouldn't it benefit us as a municipality to, I mean, sounds as if we're already having problems getting as many people to apply. That department may see something that the HR wouldn't see. For me, in the past, like I said, dealing with HR would take those applications, look at it and say, here, department, here's the application I received, filter out what you want, and they make the decision. HR kind of normally removes itself.
Not normally. When you look at the way the state does it, Rocky Mount, Wake Forest, they go through and they normally weed out. It is not unheard of that I have sent them all through.
Okay.
Chris Ray and I have had a conversation that, you know, we're moving in that direction for some of his positions as well. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, and it's not always exactly the same way. We try to be as consistent as possible so that we can have a process that is consistent and is defensible. And that's our goal, is to make sure that we keep the town in a place where we can get the best person for the job and move forward knowing that if we're challenged, we have a process in place that we follow.
Because what I'm getting, like I said, part of the reason I'm asking that is that I'm getting citizens saying that new citizens that are coming in, it's not looking for any favoritism or anything. They say they're applying and they're not hearing anything back from the municipality. And they're saying, well, they'll reach out to a department and say, no, I didn't hear anything back. So it's like, okay, I'm trying to figure out where that filtering is cutting off. Those applications are not reaching those department heads. So it's like, okay, what is it that we're missing? That's all, I'm just trying to get a balance.
If a department head
heard that as well.
knows that someone has applied and they want to see an application,
Yes, ma'am.
I will pass it through.
Okay.
I mean, I am not the end-all to beat-all when it comes to, the applications.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
But may I also ask that if we're not going to be passing an application along, that those applicants be notified? Because I have heard from several people that they have applied and heard nothing, not thank you very much, but we're not interested, or yes, we're passing it along, and you might hear from somebody else. Just letting people know that either they're still in the running or they're no longer being considered would probably be super helpful. And I get that, like, you get 27 applications, and 3 might continue on to the department in question, but I think it's just good practice if we could maybe implement a thank you so much for the interest. Please keep your eye out for something in the future.
Right, we've closed
They
this.
do get that. The system automatically sends them an email when an application comes out, and I've tested it a bunch of times. I've had multiple people test it, and they get it. And then once a decision is made on who is moving forward, letters are sent out to everyone that is not moving forward. And if the people that are not, an offer is not made to, we hold off giving them more information until we get through some of the background and other items, because if someone does not pass a background, then we may go to the second person. So we wait until all of that is complete and we know a start date, and when that start date comes, I will call, and I like to call them. I don't like to send a letter if they have interviewed. I want to call them and tell them that, we appreciate them and that we have chosen someone else for the job.
Okay, cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
The last thing for me, I just think is that the department heads have that say and get to see all the applicants. That's just key for me right now. Like I said, I think it's important that the department heads, they're the subject matter experts. It's not myself, commissioners, not the HR, not the town manager. It's not, the mayor is anybody. I think it's that department head. We really need to get a system where the department heads play a big factor in who they hire. They're gonna see they know that team element that they're trying to put together. I don't think we have policy in place. If it takes that or whatever it may be, that department head, they get to see all those applicants and they get to weed out the process of what they desire to do, not taken from HR at all. Please know that. I just want to figure out how we can make sure that they are getting that. Like I said, they get that option.
Yes, sir.
2 questions. You skipped over fire, so I'm assuming they're fully staffed. And then the admin IT, I believe there's 4 positions, the assistant town manager, 2 IT positions, and the town clerk. Do you know where we are on those?
I only listed the ones that have been advertised at this point. The clerk is in your hands, so I don't know where you are in that process. The IT director we are in right now, I did forget the engineer. I apologize for that. We're in the process with the engineer with Developmental Associates. We will do IT director after that. And then the assistant town manager, I'm not sure where that one is. I've not been a part of that discussion as of yet either. I know it's not supposed to start until after the first of the year, I think. And then, what was the last one? I missed one.
Well, there were, in the admin IT area,
the
there's the
specialist.
assistant town manager, the engineer, 2 ITs, and then the board has to be getting our act together in the town clerk
As far as the job description.
description, posting, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, once you guys get the job description together, posting it is the easy piece. We can, take care of that without a problem. The IT specialist position would be hired by the IT director. So that position has to get here first, get their feet on the ground, and go from there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So where do we send on the clerk for us? Then what do we?
We need to come up with a job description. And I think some of us, we sent out a couple of examples, but no response. And so that's something that the board needs to be cognizant of.
Yes, sir.
Is going on and finalizing some type of job description.
Well, we need to do that in public,
Correct.
open session. We can't be making those decisions through email. So we need to actually put it on the date. I would like to be able to put it on for our retreat, for us to have that
Okay.
discussion so that we can get moving on it, because we really have to hire a clerk, and it needs to be done before the end of the year.
I like that.
I agree.
I like that.
So retreat issue,
Yes, sir.
item.
Yes, sir.
Everybody agree?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I was under the impression we were going to talk about the cameras in the park.
Well, I was going to recognize Sheila Long to provide a Parks and Rec update. While she's coming to the front, Commissioner Miles talked about the director's involvement in the application process. I just want to be real clear with the board. HR's involvement, as well as an outside person in the review process, that's coming from me. And I think that's very important, that HR be in the interview process, as well as a subject matter expert from another organization.
I think my key there is ensuring that now where we're growing, the way our municipality is set up, that since that word we all kind of look at diversity. I'm looking at diversity now in my fire department, my police department, my town staff. I want to ensure that there's a variable that hasn't been changed. I don't know what it is, but ensuring that people, when they apply, they're getting that opportunity at least to hear from the municipality, the town, and saying, okay, yay or nay. I'm not saying calling out HR by no means anyway directly, but those department heads are the subject matter experts. I've yet to be at a place, I've been working now, whatever, since I was, my gosh, since all my life, but now I've never seen where HR was kind of like that end-all be-all. It was a weed out. You pass those applications to the subject matter expert. They take a look at those applications and say, okay, this is who I want. They don't, even if it's an application that doesn't qualify, that department head has an opportunity to look at that application, because it may be something that HR doesn't understand. I don't completely understand everything public works does. I don't understand everything fire do, park and rec do. But that subject matter expert that we've hired as a municipality understands what they're looking for. So I think it's key that the department head plays a big factor in that hiring process. And that's the opportunity to see all applications, not just selective weeded out.
Yeah, so as far as the screening, and Lisa touched on this, and maybe it wasn't picked up on, this is not, when it comes to the applications coming in, there's not a hard, fast rule on that, and we modify that. In fact, we are modifying that right now. I had a conversation with Chris Ray just last week about some of the applications, or the positions that he's seeking applications on. For what he's looking for, I don't think we need an HR screening process for that, okay?
Right.
I just wanted to clarify with you, when it comes to the interview, the reason HR is in the room is because I want them there, and I want some sort of outside entity. Now, it doesn't have to be for all positions, but when we get higher up into mid-management, I want more of that HR presence in the interview process, as well as subject matter experts from other organizations. I just wanted to clarify that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so with that, I'll recognize Sheila Long for a Parks and Rec update.
Manager, it's not on the agenda. Can we adjourn and then add it to the work session agenda?
Well, the manager's report is just a manager's report. I identified A and B because that's a standing report. You're always going to get a development update and a human resources update because that's what you all have asked for. But as I did before the development update or the human resources, I can add things that I think are important for the board to hear. If you all want to adjourn to take a break or whatever, you can, but just because it's not listed doesn't mean that I'm not gonna bring up something to share with the board.
I think it can pretty much be any department head. They're all
That's
functional.
fine, but I thought we were going to have more of a conversation about it. So, and I had asked for it to be put on the August 17th agenda. So, I mean, that's fine.
You can have a
ahead.
conversation on it, just very much like what you did with Lisa Markland. So with that, I'll recognize Sheila Long.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the board. I want to start out with some great news. As we learned recently, the Recreation Authority, or the Parks and Recreation Authority of the state, has recommended that the town of Zebulon receive $500,000 for Little River Park Phase 1. So, yes, that is great news for us on so many levels, but I also think it ties in very well to what I wanted to talk about this evening in our department update. In that process, we work extremely closely with Recreation Resource Services. We get an identified consultant that's provided by the state that is housed within the North Carolina State Parks. And they work very, very closely across the state with one another, and they try to work with the different municipalities. They provide trainings, but they also facilitate the PARTIF application process. They also help support the LWCF process, as well as, I believe there's a new grant called the AFP, which is fairly new, that the Recreation Authority also makes the recommendations for funding on that as well. And so working with Recreation Resource Services and having a good relationship with them is tremendously important. As well as the process that's outlined by Recreation Resource Services and the Recreation Authority recognizes the importance of community engagement and planning. It's valued very highly. Something that we try to work closely. We have worked closely with our recreation resource consultants over the year to make sure that we are putting forth best practice. And in the particular case for Zebulon, as long as we've started this master planning process and we've had this master planning process, I have celebrated that our community shows its support for recreation and its support for the programming that we do and that we want in the community because of the level of participation that we've had to date. And that in our master plan process, we actually had higher participation than you typically see for communities around us that are much, much larger. And so that's a sentiment to our community. I do also believe that there are ways to continue to improve that. And we have to always be working to improve that. And there are a lot of different ways to get that engagement, and that is continuing to be researched and analyzed across the country, not just here locally. Our master plan, as you know, we began that. We went through COVID with it. We still had huge participation from the community. Then we got that plan adopted by the board, and we appreciate that because it's been huge. And I told y'all from the very beginning, having a document like that helps us to plan how we're going to move forward, but it also helps us to secure funding. And so we're excited to be able to show where you've been able to do that. But it also sets the guide. The master plan is the comprehensive plan. And then you have your park-specific plan. So as you know, you just adopted your Little River Park site-specific plan. We got recognized as they go through the meeting with the authority. They'll read out every project and how it stands in the scoring. The authority themselves don't necessarily comment on every project, but for the town of Zebulon, a representative of the authority specifically pointed out that Zebulon did a great job of planning and engaging the community. And so I think that that's important for us to note because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work for you guys, but it's hard for community, like they see survey after survey and focus group after focus group and meeting after meeting, and they see all of this stuff, and it's like, well, we didn't see anything happen, nothing changed. And so all these things have to fall into place, and it takes that time, but there are fruits of that, and we're so excited to see just another step in that direction. With that said, our master plan recognizes that we want to use a variety of practices to engage our community, we don't stop just at our master plan. It is considered a 10-year document at the rate we're growing. It can't sit at just a 10-year document. We'll have to constantly be evaluating our park system and our programming and how we are working with our community. And so our master plan recognizes, and even your vision goals stated, that we would work with our community continuously in the development of parks and in the development of programming. And so I just wanted to just highlight, you've seen, we've used our public input platform to engage our community. We did it with the master plan, with our visioning. We also did it with, this was Little River Park, where you're able to see the different stages of the Little River Park plan. And that leads us to how we play. So how we play is an initiative that our department is working on, so we want to do a couple of things. The board had indicated an interest in understanding a little more about park use. And so in addition to getting that information for the board, there's also value to that from an operational standpoint, that we're really excited to be able to understand that park use a little bit better. We're piloting something. We're working in coordination with Dr. Aaron Hipp. He is consulting with us pro bono. He's got a lot of experience doing this type of work. We're using a similar process that does include cameras that are placed near amenities. And this same technique has been used in different capacities across our state. Specifically with Dr. Aaron Hipp, there was a project that he worked with the CDC, where there were several counties where this process was utilized in parks to understand health and the impact of access to resources on your health and how to improve that. Let's see, the next piece that we've got is community engagement. So we will continue to build out what this community engagement looks like. The initial pieces that we want to highlight is that we will be at our events. We'll be at the Gill Street Cookout. We'll also be at our Rock the Block series in September and October, just working with the community, getting them to have conversation with us. We'll have engagement boards, but we'll also have a survey that I'll talk about in a minute where they'll be able to participate there. The goal of this is to meet our community where they are, so we're not just stopping at those 3 events. We will be, as we shared with the board in a previous department update, we're going into the schools, we're going to go into the Boys and Girls Club, we're going to meet with civic groups, we're going to try and meet with the community members at large. So if there's anybody that wants to invite us to have a discussion, we would love to do that, and my contact information is listed under the community engagement to be able to do that. And then the survey, which was actually the first thing, sorry, I went out of order. But the survey will be posted live after we have our discussion tonight. So we are looking to ask similar questions to what you would have seen during the master planning process. We didn't necessarily ask all of them, but we are asking the majority of those questions because we do want to see, has there been a shift? Our community has changed a lot. We've grown a lot since this survey originally went out. So we'll be able to kind of measure how those changes are happening, and we'll also be able to be responsive. I'm gonna go back to the data-driven evaluation. So this is important, and I think it's reflective. I was talking with our staff, and if you look at park use, it's not been evaluated in our industry quite like how we evaluate program participation. So it's very common for us to know exactly how many people participated in our programs and exactly how many people are returning to programs and things like that. And so the future of this industry is going to rely on technology, such as cameras, in order to understand park use at large. And so you're going to see a shift, and as we develop parks, those are conversations we'll need to have. There's two pieces of technology that you're starting to see as basic infrastructure for park systems, and that's going to include access to public Wi-Fi as well as cameras. And cameras can be both for security purposes, but also for understanding park use. And so you'll see opportunity for us to have those discussions as we move forward. And I'm available to answer questions. Yes.
Commissioner Baxter?
So the cameras and the usage, that was supposed to come before us August 7th. Clearly, that didn't happen because of the storm situation. I don't understand, and I'm assuming that this is the time for us to talk about this. I don't understand why we are just evaluating August and September, and I need to understand how that data is going to be utilized. August is the hottest month pretty much here in North Carolina, and so we're not going to see the numbers at the park at any of the parks that we normally would see, with the exception of maybe Little River Park, where kids might be putting their toes in the water. And then we have September, when the majority of our students are going to be back in school. And so I'm concerned about how that data is going to be used to make decisions that would span an entire year. Mm-hmm. I don't think that the data collection process, from how I'm understanding what you've described, is adequate for us to be making big decisions about our parks off of just 2 months' data. And then part of what is up in this verbiage is trying to understand, like, the race and the gender of people that utilize our parks. And people identify as different genders now. Mm-hmm. And just because you see someone that's brown doesn't mean that they are of a particular race. And so you're going to be making assumptions based on photographs. Mm-hmm. I have forwarded you and the town manager and our mayor, as well as our mayor pro tem. I had a conversation with Mike Gramley, who is the superintendent of the San Antonio River Authority in San Antonio, Texas. I've actually had several conversations with different folks, asking them about what kind of data collection techniques that they use. Mm-hmm. And his is very different, but very, very successful. His is more like, what they use is a camera eye that can detect motion when something goes past the camera eye. And he is very, very confident with the data that he collects. And he doesn't have to make assumptions that someone is male or female or Latino or Indian. He's just using the data. And I've forwarded that to you so you can take a look at it, because I'm just not sure that using the cameras in this fashion is the best way to use them. And cameras in general have caused some people to be uncomfortable. And I don't want people to not use our parks because we're taking pictures of them and their children. No matter how that data is then used, there are parents who have concerns about images of their children being out in, I mean, of course, we live in a digital age. Everyone has pictures of everything. I took probably 3 pictures of stuff I was eating today. So, I mean, there's pictures about everything. But I think that we also have to be respectful and cognizant that, you know, the cameras might make some people uncomfortable. And for me, the board wasn't given the information that cameras were going to be used in the fashion that they were going to be used prior to signs being put out. And so I've had to field questions both over the phone and in person from people that were very, very concerned, only to have me say, well, I don't know. And so I'd like to know.
Yeah, so I'm going to try to do my best to address the majority of your points, and if I miss anything, just let me know. So in response to just August and September, you're 100% right. That's why I said we want to pilot this. Ideally, we're going to come back and we're going to have information that we can get for every month or every season, so we have consistent data. We are not using, the cameras are going to tell us how many and at what time and on what day. But it does, we are able to account for everyone that's there, regardless of race, regardless of age, regardless of gender. But when we know when people are there, because I think the other piece that's important, the board tasked me with getting this information, but also was very clear they wanted reliable data and they wanted it done in a very affordable manner. And the manner that we have developed in discussion with Recreation Resource Services and discussion with Dr. Aaron Hipp, who is a subject matter expert in this field and is very well respected, not just nationally, but internationally in this type of work. In fact, this process has been recognized nationally and internationally for being practical and efficient and effective. And so you're right, we do want to continue to pull data in a very similar manner. And it sounds like the person that you've talked with kind of, I think you said it was Mike Brimley, which I have not gotten that email, and I would love to get that email if you would forward that.
I resent it out to you guys actually just a few minutes ago.
Okay,
I don't
perfect.
know who got it when, but I've resent it, so.
Wonderful. I'll look forward to looking at that. But I think that's just very representative of the statement I made earlier, that the future of understanding our park use and making plans for our parks includes, it's multifaceted. We have to work with our community, we have to hear from our community, we have to meet our community where they are, but we also have to understand how data plays a role in that, because not everybody is going to participate in that manner. And so there are lots of ways that we can use technology to get great information. And it sounds like the person you spoke with is giving a great example of how that technology is being implemented across the industry and is being used and is successful. And it is going to take an investment. And that's going back to the conversation that, or the point I made earlier, is that there's a conversation that we'll have to have as we develop our parks and as we continue to move forward. People are expecting cameras for security purposes in the park now. That's becoming to be more and more prevalent. But public Wi-Fi is extremely important as well in public spaces like parks. And so those are conversations we'll need to continue to have as we develop parks, are those things that we value and we feel are basic infrastructure that as we move forward, we're going to be able to address. Because there are some municipalities, much, much larger than ours, that they want these things in their parks, but they didn't address it early enough on, and now they've gotten so big that it's extremely costly for them to go back and add this type of infrastructure. And so as we are at this point where we're growing so rapidly and we're going to be building new parks, those are conversations we want to be in front of.
Well, I would think that we would want to monitor these types of usages, not just for our parks, but maybe in our other open spaces that we have throughout our community. And with that said, and I will give you, take the opportunity at some point to look through the information that I sent you. If it means an investment in technology where we're not going to be perhaps quite as invasive but still want to collect data, we are part of the Eastern Wake Local Government Association, which gives us this wonderful opportunity to talk with the other municipalities about, hey, we want to get some pieces of tech. They cost $5,000 a piece or whatever. Could we pool our resources, but also apply for a grant, for a federal grant, and if there's multiple municipalities, there's a good chance that it's going to be accepted. So while this camera situation might be a stopgap measure, I think that we could really benefit the town and our citizens if we look to other ways for data collection and maybe explore how that could be funded, whether we all invest from different communities a portion, or if we, as a group of communities, write a grant to help purchase some of that we all can share.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's something worth considering, and I think the fact that we are demonstrating our interest and our value of this type of information by piloting this effort, if we go through a grant process, I think that this would help us to be able to tell that story of, hey, we got this snapshot, but we need more. We're trying to serve our community better, and maybe we can say there are things we would have preferred to have been able to tell by enhanced technology, and these things we would like to make sure that we address. So I think that we can show where we are taking the steps forward to really understand these things in our community, but also recognize we still have a lot of need to be met. And we could absolutely have the conversation of what are those needs? Are there things outside of just how our parks are being used that we would want to understand by the implementation of camera systems? I'll give the example. I mean, technology can do so many things, and I'll give the example of Wake Forest. They installed camera systems that can detect, from last I recall, air pollution, and there's just so many things that we could discuss, like what are we trying to use technology for, so that as we look through that and we work with our other municipalities, there's a lot to gain there.
Thanks for coming before us and explaining everything that was going on with that. I have one more question for you that is in relationship to the grant.
Yes.
Now, is that going to allow us to build out more from the Little River Master Plan, or are we going to just use that grant money to do what we have already approved for the master plan, and then we will use that savings somewhere else?
So the budget you've currently allocated assumes that you're getting that $500,000 from Part F. So it is freeing up your requirement to have to use general fund, right? But you were assuming all along that you were going to get Part F funding. Now, I will say, I can't make you promises. This project has a ton of potential. We are going to have to do some work, which we're going to do through the design process in order to go after LWCF, which we anticipated when we had to send a review to SHPO.
Will you tell folks LWCF?
It's the Land Water Conservation Fund. And it's very vague in how that information comes out. Like, it's recommending that you do, but then you go through the whole process, and then our consultant told us, you need to go through and do these other studies before you apply for LWCF, so you're not wasting your time and you don't have to come back. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to go through the design phase. We're going to get everything squared away, because when you work with the federal government, there's just a lot of things and surprises that can come up, and we just don't want to delay the project any more than we do. So our hope is to be able to get LWCF so that we can not have to use the town's funds as much, and that would free those, and then those funds, I would like to think the town would put towards future phases or pick up amenities to add to the project. So,
Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. But congratulations, because that's huge. I was very excited. It's huge for the, yeah.
I think that we're all really excited. I mean, I know that we already kind of assumed that it was going to happen, but yeah, there was a chance that it might not have happened. So, huzzah.
Yeah, well, my fingers were super crossed because we were on the, there was a lot of red. We talked about this, Chris and I spoke about like the part of scoring in our management team meeting, but it is it's a challenge. And when you have a park like Little River, that's an established park, but it doesn't currently have, it's not developed, it doesn't have like you lose scoring potential. And so because of that, like we were on the cusp from just the staff scoring, but because it wasn't a developed park, this authority, just based on our observations, then we didn't have any discussion, but based on our observation of the projects that they funded at a higher level, they were more interested in funding new parks. And so we really think that's what put us over the line, because just based on the scoring, I mean, it could have gone either way for us. So it's a great project, and I had faith. So
Now, would you explain that this has been approved, but it's also in budget?
yeah, absolutely. So the authority operated under what the current budget is. The state has not yet adopted their budget, and so we don't anticipate PARTF, because that also funds projects for the state park system. In every proposal that we have seen, PARTF has gotten more money than it had in the current budget, so we don't anticipate them losing money, where our project would not be awarded. But the state is going to have to adopt their budget before we can go under contract with our grant.
So are we going to move forward with funds from the general fund and start what we said that we're going to start, and then
So we're going to start the design phase. Only a small fraction of that was included in Part F anyway, and we have been in coordination with our recreation resource consultant. They said as long as our design planning isn't more than 2 years out, that we would be able to include some of those costs in the project. So we're moving forward with the design phase. We're going to move forward with including what's required to apply for LWCF that we didn't currently have.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
One last quick question, getting in reference to the cameras. How can we assure the citizens that the cameras that we're using in the park are not becoming like going to be utilized like our flock cameras that we have? How do we assure those citizens of that?
Like police having access to them?
Correct.
Is that what you mean? Well, they're not security cameras. The police, they don't have access to them in the capacity that they are. Only one person on my staff currently has access to the cameras. And so we don't anticipate that changing. I mean, if there was an issue that came up, we would just have to coordinate with our attorney and the police department on what would need to happen. But it's not recording, it's not a live feed, and it's not recording. And so there's going to be, I would think, limited benefit in that manner.
So it's not any time in the duration, somebody can walk out to the park and leave and get in their car and go. And it looks like they utilize the park, literally. I mean, that's what you're saying, or no? Because it's not recording the duration.
It's 15-minute intervals, right? Is that what it was?
It's not quite 15 minutes, but it's consistent.
So yeah, somebody could come visit the little library and leave, and we would have no record of that. Okay. Or someone could, yeah, you're right. Like,
but
there are going to be instances, but there's always going to be lapses where we're not capturing 100% of the data.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the questions I got about them. They want to be utilized like flock cameras, where information is turned to the police, and then the duration. How do you cover that? Monitor somebody the duration.
Yeah. When we review photo, I mean, all we're looking for, all that will be looked for is how many people are there.
Thank you.
So,
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you guys for the hard work that you put in for the grant. Great job. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
I got to say this, one last question I was kind of asked by a citizen too. When I heard about the funds, and talked about, can those funds something be utilized for a bathroom man like we talked about for Gill Street, or does it have to go to a specific park? How does that work too?
The 500,000?
Correct.
That was adopted specifically for Little River Park Phase 1.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yep.
But it can free up other monies.
Other funds the other way.
Right.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was saying. Thank you.
All right, so somewhat related to our next and last recognition, our communications manager has noted that we got a lot to celebrate. We don't necessarily push out as much as we could or should. And so I want to take this opportunity to recognize Sheila Long and her staff. That Part F is highly competitive, highly competitive. And the fact that we came in at number 13, which is no guarantee you're going to get money, but also for that board to recognize the town of Zebulon and actually give funding, the full amount of the funding that's available, that's a big testament. So Sheila Long and her staff are doing a great job. All right, I'm very excited to share this news. So Caleb Harmon has started his position as communications manager with the town of Zebulon, Zebulon's first. He's a fellow native Charlottean and comes to us most recently from Washington, D.C., where he served as media relations manager for Emerge. I'll tell you a little bit about Emerge because I think it's very cool. They are the only political organization that focuses on effective state and national programming that gives women the tools they need to run and win, as well as building an inclusive sisterhood of alums and a network of alumni, staff, boards, and volunteers who are on the ground 365 days a year to support women through their candidacies at every level and once they are elected. I think that's awesome. Before that, if that wasn't enough, he served as the Louisiana Democratic Party's press secretary prior to his time in D.C. And so with that, I welcome Caleb Harmon to the town of Zebulon. Share anything if you want.
Good evening, everybody.
Are you sure you don't mean good morning, Zebulon?
Tomorrow, don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Good evening, Zebulon.
There you go.
know, I'll keep it in theme. Why not? I am very excited to be here and serving as the first communications manager for the town of Zebulon. Y'all have such an incredible community that you have built. Y'all have so many exciting projects, so many exciting initiatives. And as Joe has mentioned, not enough people in this town are bragging about the incredible things y'all are doing. Whether it's Parks and Recreation, getting a $500,000 grant, whether it is our finance department winning the same award that they've won for the past 30 years, going on their 30th year anniversary, whether it's all the incredible accomplishments that our planning department's doing as the town just hit 10,000 residents. There is so much to talk about, and that's chiefly what I believe I've been brought on here, is to communicate with the public, communicate with the residents of this town, to talk about all the things that the town's been doing, to talk about the new initiatives that are on the horizon, and most importantly, to communicate to all the different communities that Zebulon has. Especially for where we are in the state, Zebulon has such a unique and rich set of diversity and such a unique and rich set of communities that all have different needs when it comes to reaching out and when it comes to speaking to them. Whether that's through digital spaces like social media, whether that's in person at the different events that we have, or whether that's through the different civic groups, the different committees, the different coalitions that make up this town. Every single community deserves to have an equitable way to be reached out to, and every single community deserves to have their voice heard. And that's what I'm most excited about, and most excited to be brought on here. So I'm excited to work with each and every one of y'all and really talk about all the incredible things that are happening in the town of Zebulon.
Kayla, well, welcome. Do you speak any additional languages besides English?
Unfortunately not. I have taken 8 years of Spanish class, and I can ask where the bathroom is and order 2 beers at a bar, so.
Okay.
But he does.
That's something.
That is
to
something.
I mean, if you're ever trapped in a Hispanic country, maybe that will help you survive. But are you going to be able to reach out to our community members who have English as a second language and who more readily speak Spanish, or whether it's Farsi or some other language? I mean, how are we going to make sure that, you talked about being able to equitably reach out to those communities, and I would certainly hope that you've got a plan in place so that we can make sure that our message is put out in multiple languages.
Of course, and that's actually a really good point. I believe that the Hispanic population in Zebulon is 16% right now, and a large chunk of that population is predominantly Spanish-speaking households and Spanish-speaking communities. And so when I take a look at that, obviously as somebody that doesn't speak Spanish, there is that initial barrier to entry there, and I'm starting to identify different tools that we can use to reach out to those communities. The very first one that I'm thinking of is when I was working with Sheila to develop How We Play. The public input website and board has an automatic translation feature to make sure that we can actually reach out and make sure that that language barrier is being broken down almost immediately. But there are also other ways that we can reach out to the communities through community leaders in the Hispanic and Spanish-speaking communities. One thing that I'm putting together is what I'm calling a strategic communications partnership. And that's taking a look at influencers and community leaders from across the different communities in Zebulon, with the idea that we don't necessarily know what communities need to be communicated with in different ways until we actually ask the leaders in those communities how they are. And even more importantly, just posting on social media, just hanging up flyers, things like that aren't going to reach the different communities. So by building this list and building this strategic communications partnership, my hope is that we can have leaders from Spanish-speaking communities, from Hispanic communities, that can share this information within their community in a way that's really accessible to them.
I don't want to forget the Latinx or just Latin communities, because 16% is actually a lot.
Absolutely, yeah.
Awesome, well.
And again, these are communities that have been traditionally overlooked by traditional government structures and traditional political structures. And my main goal is to make sure that we are not going to be a community that's perpetuating that.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Of course.
Welcome aboard.
And while Caleb may not speak Spanish, he used to go to Louisiana State. He can tell you all the great restaurants in Louisiana to eat.
Oh, not just tell you about the great restaurants, I can cook a mean jambalaya.
Oh, there you go.
So are you volunteering to cook for the community? Is that what I'm hearing?
I will say if you invite me to a potluck, I will come very well prepared.
All right.
Thank you.
You heard it from his mouth, Zebulon.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
That concludes the manager's report, Mayor.
Any other questions, comments?
Would like to make a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn?
Second.
Second? All in favor? We will reconvene in about 15 minutes.
Yep.